Here we go.
There it is.
All right. So Ryan and I being giggly over here already. And Megan's like probably watching like, oh god, they're just doing that on purpose. Anyway, so tonight we are talking about feedback, which I think we can all agree is a very good soft skill to have. And that's what we're talking about here tonight on System.debug.
Yeah.
I love your face when you play that. You're like,
It's so
picture you like a
smooth.
cigarette. You're like, yeah, man,
Yeah.
I remember when I wrote that.
Coming to you 9 a.m. jazz on a Sunday. Yeah, that's
Headley Jazz.
Headley Jazz. Nice. So, yes, feedback. I'm very
Yeah.
interested because it's both, I'm assuming we're going to talk about both giving and receiving said feedback, correct? And
You
how
got it.
important that loop is. All
Yeah.
right.
So exactly. So the thing and the reason that I kind of thought about this, and I'm not going to say any names, but there are developers in the world who are out there who have a hard time not only giving but receiving feedback. They feel like it's a critique on who they are. They feel like it's an attack, which I mean, you got to look at the person who's giving the feedback, right? It could very well be, but we're here to kind of take that, dissect it a little bit, break it down, figure out if it's good feedback, quote unquote good, like actual, is this usable feedback? And then figure out, is it good or bad feedback, and what we can do with that. So the first thing we're going to talk about, what is feedback, right? So there's a whole bunch of different wonderful dictionary definitions of feedback, which you can go look up for yourself on merriam-webster.com if you really like to. But feedback is just one person giving another person a critique of their work on a task or a set of tasks, right? And that's how we use it in our world. This applies across the board to admins, to DevOps, developer, management. It goes across PM, everything across the board. Feedback is good, and it helps you take yourself from point A to point B and make a nice line. So you have a direction, right?
Yeah. I'd like to add too, it
Yeah.
goes up as well as down,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Or it should in good organizations,
Yes.
right? I mean, you should be able to
Yes.
give constructive feedback to your managers. They should be asking for it as well. If not, you might want to question, why, because that kind of feedback is very important both directions. So,
Yeah, and that's actually another really good point I'd like to bring up because I was talking about feedback the other day. Um, and somebody said to me, I remember this distinctly because they looked at me like I was crazy when I told them. And as I'm a consultant, right? So I told them, I said, I had some of my people come in and request feedback for me, right? And they were just kind of like, I saw the explosion just grow, that mushroom cloud just, and they were just like, why would you ever do that? Like I was like, because I want to know how I'm doing. Number one, that's first and foremost. I want to make sure that I'm doing a good job here. Like I want to make sure I'm on par with what's expected and what I'm giving. Right. I want to make sure I'm on par. I want to make sure I'm doing what's right. And on top of all that, I mean, why would you ever in your whole entire life not want feedback on something? Because I'm constantly looking to grow. Are they not looking to grow? Maybe. I don't know. But the point is that feedback is really, really excellent, especially when it's good, when it's constructive, and you can take that value and move yourself in the upward direction. And again, like Ryan said, it doesn't just come down from the top. Feedback is not a downward motion sort of thing. You should also be attempting to give feedback on your superiors, all the management around, so like PMs, the admins, pretty much anyone that you deal with on a daily or weekly basis, on any regular basis, you should be giving some feedback to, especially if they need to improve. But also, if they're doing really good, because it's good. It's nice to have a pat on the back sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
So,
mean, it's very important that you are doing both, right? I mean,
mhm.
you kind of want to stay away from that cliche that's like you kiss them on one cheek and slap them on the other kind of thing. I mean, you don't have to make sure that the good and the bad are necessarily equal, but I mean, as a receiver of feedback, you might, or as a giver of feedback, you might want to think a little bit about the receiver. Like, am I just coming down really heavy on this person? Right. And some people will be able to take it, others won't. So, you know, think about that, I guess, in your delivery. But yeah,
Yeah.
it should both be, um, here's what I see that you can improve, and here's what I see that you're doing great. Right. It
Mhm.
should come in both of those forms. Right. So,
Yeah. Another good thing to think about while we're just on the topic of generic feedback, right? Think about things like you would in a retro, if you have retros, or think about things as having a certain value to them, right? Can I make this actionable? Does this have the value of becoming an actionable item, right? Because if it's not, if you just, let's just be blunt, if you walk up to somebody and you give them feedback and you say, hey, Ryan, you suck. That's, there's no action that can be derived from that feedback. That is not only negative feedback, but that's bad feedback.
mhm.
That's trash feedback. So you can't just walk up to someone and say, "Man, you're just doing a bad job," because they can't derive an action from that and then progress it to the next level. They can't build themselves up from that. They can't dig themselves out of that hole because you're giving them no shovel. You're giving them no thing of value that they can take and move forward with. So that's something that people need to kind of take out of their I guess rotation of feedback. You can't just hurl insults at people, and you also can't just hurl compliments at people the same way, because if you say to somebody, "Oh, you're doing a great job," wonderful. What? Uh, where? How? Like, hey Ryan, you're doing a great job, man.
Thanks. I'll just do more of everything.
Yeah, am I doing a great job at raising my kids? Am I doing a great job at hosting the show? Is my bump really good? Like, what part of it? Somebody give me something else.
Yeah.
So again, same thing. So we're gonna go down these two tunnels, if you will. But first, I want to ask you, Ryan,
Mhm.
why is feedback important to you? What do you think?
For me, it's one of those people, one of those things where I like to know where I stand. It's kinda like when you get in trouble at home and you don't know why, right? And you
Yeah.
ask, you're like, "What'd I do?" And they don't wanna talk about it, and like, "But if you don't talk about it, I'm never gonna know what I was doing that wasn't right," right? For me, so that's what it is. I like to know where I stand, and, I do like to improve. I always wanna be doing the best job that I can, and if I'm not getting feedback on improvement or feedback on what I'm doing well, I'm just kind of, bouncing around in the ethers guessing, maybe it's because, I'm not hearing anything, so I must be doing, okay. Which that's not exactly great feedback either, right? I mean, no feedback. I guess no news is good news, right? But it's still not very informative. I've got no path forward um, to improve, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's pardon me, that's why it's important. And I do want to add too. You mentioned, think about it as in a retro style. One thing that we always make sure in our retros is everybody knows that the information that we are delivering in a retro is assuming that everybody is meaning the best, right? Nobody is coming here with malintent and anything like that. So it's the same way. And when you said retro, I'm like, oh, that's a really good point, because that's how we think, and that's how you need to think about feedback as well. Is I'm here. I'm not here to make you mad. I'm not here to make you feel bad. I'm here coming because I think I see a situation where we can all improve, or here's a situation where you can improve, or here's a situation that you're doing great, right? But don't ever assume that that person's coming to you just because it's malintent, or they feel like you're not doing a job out of malintent or anything like that. So I just wanted to add that. But yeah, feedback super important to me. I thrive on it. We have a we have a feedback circle where I work now, where you can give anybody. in the organization feedback, and we call it, I guess, real time, more or less, right? And then once a month, we give it to our managers, they give it to us, and I look forward to those all the time. So I'm like, give me something, right? So yeah, I really look forward to those ones when you get the ones that say, I can't think of one, but like, here's what you're doing great. It's been great to see you. This one thing you might want to think about is this. Great, cool, thanks. That's something, to your point, that I can take action on.
So to that point, right? For anyone who isn't clear on what retros are or doesn't take part in retros, the idea is that you're not coming with bias. So take the retro out of it. Even that's why I kind of like pulled back when I said retro, because that's how you and I approach retros, right?
Mhm.
But taking the retro aside, you're just basically trying to be as unbiased as you can about another person while you're giving them feedback, even if you hate this person. Like if you absolutely just despise this person, all they do all day is talk about their kids and see pictures of their kids and talk about poop and puke and all this stuff, and you're like, oh, I've had it with you. You're the most annoying human ever, or whatever, right? I'm just saying that because I'm a dad and I'm sure people are annoyed by me. Um, but even if you hate the person, look at it from a very technical, very unbiased sort of way and give them feedback based on that and that alone. And really try. I know it's hard. We're all humans. I know it's very, very difficult. But try to take that bias out of it if you can, or as much as you can. You really should try to kind of go down that path. So, types of feedback. I'm going to share with you some feedback that I got that was, and I'm not going to verbatim, I'm not going to give you verbatim, but I'm going to give you the kind of an idea of feedback, right? So, like I said, I asked some of my management to go ahead and ask my current client what kind of feedback they had for me. So, first thing they said was, he's doing great. He does X, Y, and Z really well. He came in and he knew this and that. And he's really helped to coach some of the juniors into getting better at X, Y, and Z. Like, I'm trying to be a little generic here because I'm not really allowed to talk about clients. But anyway, so they gave me a good roundabout sort of like, oh, he's really helping out here in this general area with the juniors. He's really performing well. He's performing as we expect, right? So that's good-ish. It's not really actionable, but it's good-ish. And then they said, we wish that he would bring more presentation style material, things that we can consume from Slalom to us. And I said, ooh, that's great. I got it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Thinking, right? So I thought about that, and of course, some people might get upset. I'm bringing all kinds of stuff. Okay, that's fine. That's fair. Maybe you are bringing stuff. Maybe they just want you to bring more stuff. Okay, cool, right? So that's how I handled it. I said, all right, I'm bringing a little bit here and there, but it's really not in a formal sort of setting. So what did I do? I came up with a session on feedback for them. And that's kind of where this spawned from. So I came up with a session on feedback from them, and I'm going to, of course, present it pretty soon here. But that's the point, right? So they gave me feedback. They gave me something that was for sure actionable. And now I've derived that action. I've built on top of that action. Now I'm going to give them some sort of deliverable based on that feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the chain there, for me at least. And that type of feedback, so now we're going to get into the types. That type of feedback was good. It was constructive. There were a couple things in there that I would have kind of taken and tried to make more actionable a little bit. They were nice to hear, but there's not really, and again, it might be the fact that there's not really much room to grow where I'm at right now, because you either know your stuff or you don't know your stuff, and once you know it, you know it, because it's all just SQL. So yeah, I can see why they wouldn't have given the best actionable items there. But yeah, like I said, I would have tried to make that as actionable as possible. Maybe they did. But then they gave me that really nice nugget of information and said, "Hey, we'd like him to bring more to the table, presentation wise. We'd like him to bring some stuff down for Solemn. We'd like him to bring some good information, some good talks." And there you go. So that was my action item. Now, in your life, you're going to run into a bunch of different types of feedback that we started to talk about earlier, positive and negative, and then good and bad, right? So positive feedback is somebody telling you, "Hey, you're doing a great job. Here's what you can do to be better." So keep that in mind. They're not saying, if they say, "Here's what you can do to be better," after they give you a good compliment, they're not trying to do that 5 compliments and a negative
and a
thing.
slap, yeah.
The what is it? The compliment sandwich or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know necessarily what it's called, but um, so they're not trying to do that to you. They're just trying to say, "We've got something good. We want to acknowledge that good thing. We also want to acknowledge that there's some things that you can do to kind of move on up," which is good. That means you're in a good spot. They're level setting you. They're saying, "Hey, where you're at right now, you're meeting our expectations. Here's what you could do to go above and beyond our expectations, and maybe your bonus is based on that. Maybe your promotions are based on that." So read into that only that. Only read into it as to that level, I guess. Don't go digging for negative stuff where there isn't really negative stuff. So that's the first thing. That's positive feedback. Negative feedback is when somebody's going to come at you and say, "Look, you're not really performing as we expected you to, and here's why." So hopefully they give you that "here's why." If they give you that "here's why," it's good feedback, but it's negative feedback.
Mhm.
That here's why part is going to give you, again, that level which you should set yourself on. You should say, "Okay, here's where I'm at, and now when I derive something from this, that's my action item that should take me to the next level." And maybe you are just slightly underperforming. Maybe you're just right there, right under the bar. If you take that action item and you focus on it while you keep doing the thing that you're doing and just kind of move in that direction from there, that should get you, and hopefully if they've done everything right, that should get you above the bar now. And then next time around, they're going to say, "You're doing great. We like what you're doing. Now could you do this to be a little bit better?" So hopefully, and this isn't always the case, but hopefully they're going to give you enough to get you to the next level, and then they'll talk you up again the next time around, and they'll get you to the even higher level, and next and next and next. So it's kind of like a staircase kind of situation.
Right.
So positive, negative, and then you have good and bad feedback. So we talked a little bit about this earlier. Bad feedback is just stuff that you can't derive any value from. You can't get any actionable items, and it's just more or less it's nonsense. Two two ways to handle this. I know a lot of people like to ignore it. I would say the better option. So the first option is obviously ignore it,
Mhm.
bad stuff. The second option is to kind of confront it, not in a sort of defensive way, which is really hard to do, again, because we're all
Mhm.
humans. But try to come at it with the the thought process of, "I'm going to go get more information from this human. I'm going to ask them not necessarily why they said what they said, but to explain it a little bit more and give me a little bit extra from here."
Mhm.
Um, is that how you typically? Sorry, Ryan. I'm just blah. I'm just.
No, no, that's fine.
Is that how you typically operate, or what would
Yeah,
you? What kind of examples would you give in that scenario? Like, what would you do?
I would just ask for more detail. Now, you know, in my previous jobs, I was pretty much on an island, so we really didn't have much of a feedback loop. There really was never any sort of official, this is negative feedback, this isn't whatever. There just was no real feedback whatsoever. And if you asked for it, oh yeah, you're doing great, whatever, because they were happy, the bills were getting paid, I was billable, etc. Right. And so far my feedback has been um positive where I'm at now. I've had, so we kind of rank it on, is this person doing this? Absolutely. Is this person doing this? It's mostly, and then it's, kind of like in school, where you have meets expectations, exceeds, whatever, right?
Yep.
And I can count on one hand, I think, I probably, yeah. Anyway, I haven't gotten anything below like mostly, right? And so when I see that mostly, it's like, hey, I really want to turn that into an absolutely. So could I get a little bit of detail on, what does it mean? Is there something that you saw that I could probably improve on? And it's just fortunate, I think, for me, and not everybody can say this, which is sad, but it's fortunate for me that I work for a company that is very open about that kind of thing, and nobody comes at you with any sort of malice or any sort of attitude or anything like that. So you're immediately at ease when you get that negative feedback, and then when you can go and ask for more detail, that just helps so much, right? Versus there are some folks that are in a very poison environment and they can't and don't feel comfortable talking to their manager or whatever and asking for that extra level of detail, or even somebody to the side. Maybe it's a lead developer with an ego, or maybe it's just somebody that you're working with that's on your level, but they're just to your point, they're just hard socially, right? And I think you just ask for an example. You're like, hey, great, did you see something specific that you could tell me bothered you by how I approached it, or
There
it
you
is
go.
making you think that I'm not doing what it is, so that I can make sure that we're speaking the same language? Because maybe sometimes it's just a communication issue.
Yes.
Maybe other times you're not. So get clarification on that. Do not allow just, well, you're not living up to expectations. Do not allow that to be the answer. You're like, okay, what expectation did you have of me for X, Y, and Z? And, do your best to put that into your plan if it's something that is, true or actionable or whatever. Yeah, do that in your plan.
Yeah, and that's a really good point that you bring up, and I was hoping that you would bring it up. It's not always the case that you are not doing a good job. Sometimes, and I know that we've all seen this in our lives and in our work and just all over the place as humans, misunderstandings, simple misunderstandings. The person who's giving you feedback might not necessarily be the most technical person that you've ever met, which is perfectly fine. That's absolutely perfectly fine. I am lucky right now in that the PM that I have currently is extraordinarily technical, and he understands almost perfectly what everyone on the team is doing, and it's so nice and it's so great, and you just don't get that everywhere. So this person who's giving you feedback might not be giving you the best feedback because of a misunderstanding. They might be giving you some negative feedback because of a misunderstanding. Oh, I completed task XYZ. Why did you tell me that it was? Why did you give me feedback that I need to complete things faster, or that I should have this completed by now, or whatever? They don't know. Maybe they don't know. Maybe you forgot to move a story in Jira.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's so many things that it could be, so many little things. So I think it's really important, and not to harp on this topic, but I think it's really important to go get clarification, good, bad, or otherwise, right? I think it's really good to go get some clarification.
Yeah. And Mark is saying here he's got a question,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's just really quick. Where'd it go? How would you recommend someone go about incorporating a feedback process into their overall cycles of work? Which is a
Ooh.
fantastic question. I think it's easier for developers because we have stuff like retro.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in a position that's not part of a retro, any ideas there, any tips? I told him in the chat, I just said, start asking for it. Just start asking for it. This last release, hey, I did that app. What do you think went well? What didn't?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start because there's not a lot of room for disagreement there. Like there's not a lot of room. If you say, hey, let's start doing daily stand-ups, let's start doing retros, let's start doing IPMs on Monday mornings. Sorry, excuse me. There's a lot of room for disagreement, for argument, for all these kinds of things. But if you just say something so simple as, hey, can I get some feedback on this last thing that we did? there's not really a lot of room for them to argue against it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really lays a nice groundwork, at least for you, between you and this other person. I think that lays a nice, solid foundation of I'm asking because I want that direction. I want some form of direction in my life pertaining to where we work and we're working together. And I trust you to have a certain amount of feedback for me because maybe you're my PM, maybe you're a coworker that I work with often, maybe we pair all the time. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of stuff like that, and you'll see juniors kind of allude to the fact that they want um, feedback in certain situations, and they'll ask kind of in an informal way, like, "Hey, how do you think I did over there on this last thing? Like, good, bad, okay?" And they don't know really how to ask the right type of feedback, and hopefully the person that they're asking can kind of pull out from underneath that and give them the right type of feedback. Hopefully,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think the first thing. Sorry, Ryan, I'm not trying to interrupt you, but the first
No,
thing is
you're good.
asking for it.
Keep it going.
The second thing is trying your best, and this is where the fights come in. Trying your best to get some sort of retro on the table. And I know it's a in some places they just don't have time for it. They don't have time for nonsense like retros, which I mean, hey, to each their own. We're all riding our own horses, but in regards to that, like if you don't have time for a retro, what do you have time for? Right? Like what are you doing on Fridays? What are
Mm-hmm.
you doing at the end of your sprint? You know?
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's important.
Some of the other feedback coming through, I know Megan said it once in there, is she pushes really hard for one-on-ones with her team,
Mhm.
and with her manager. She wants them with her manager, and the same thing, somebody else said that in there. I can't see it right now off the top of my head, but one-on-ones are a life changer. I remember my early jobs where I didn't have them, and I didn't know how or what I was doing. It was constant executing. So I don't know if I read that quite right. I'm a little ways away from it, but it looks like Madani. I'm going to butcher that name. I apologize. I'm not being able to say that right. But yeah, one-on-ones, I think they are. They are super valuable to have. I have a weekly one-on-one with my manager that lasts a half an hour. I have a one-on-one with a few of my peers. And I am learning just as much from those that I am leading on the team as I am from the leaders of our organization, and I'm learning all the way around, and it's been great. I've got somebody that I meet with who's also in a lead position, and we're kind of newly inherited these teams, and our teams are growing, and so him and I have a one-on-one back and forth, and we give each other feedback all the time. He's like, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, this is what I think about, what do you think about that? I think that's great. One-on-ones are fantastic for that kind of thing, particularly if you don't have any kind of formal feedback process, right? I mean,
Mhm.
if you can just start building those relationships with the people that you work with and establish that circle of trust between the two, to know that when I ask for feedback, I'm going to get honest feedback. It's not going to be jerk. It's not going to be given with attitude, or it's not going to be taken in a negative way if I'm the one giving it. It's
Mhm.
it's it's just huge. It's just huge.
Yeah. And so remember now, kind of going back around, remember when you're giving feedback, and I think Jared brought this up in the chat. Um, Kind of in the same way that Mehdi brought up the one-on-ones, how they're a life changer. Jarrett and his company is apparently trying to get one-on-ones going, and he does them for the people who are his direct reports.
Mhm.
But apparently, it kind of stops there, and I think that's a little bit sad. And Jarrett, if I were you, I would keep pushing for that because it's worthwhile to keep pushing for that. But in the same way, I bet Jarrett gives really good, solid feedback. And like I said, in the same vein of receiving that good feedback, you want to try your best when you're giving feedback. And kind of like Ryan said, don't be snippy. Don't try to be as unbiased as you can be, and keep it short, keep it concise. Try not to. So I know Megan was talking about this earlier. A lot of people react defensively to the why, but if it's known that that's your kind of entry point, like Megan was saying, that's how she kind of talks to everything. Like, why did this happen? Why this? Why this? Why this? If that's your entry point, you might be able to get away with it. A
Mhm.
lot of people, though, act defensively. They immediately, once you say, like, why did you do this? Boom, defenses are up. So that's typically, like I said, typically that's not the best way to give feedback. But in Megan's case, it seems to work. So that's good,
Yeah,
right?
because she's established that trust already with her
Mhm.
team to know that that's how she operates, so I totally get that. Whereas, when I think I used to be one of those people, if somebody asked me why, I'd immediately like, "What? You think I did it wrong? Right? Don't you trust me?" Kinda thing. That I
So,
mean, that's
did
kind
you
of
trust
how
me?
I felt when somebody would ask why, and
Yeah.
so I think it's softer delivery when somebody says something like, playing devil's advocate here, why would we do it this way? Or why would we do it that way? Or what if this happened? Or what if that, to get around to those. But, that's goes back to the one-on-ones. Jarrett may be the only person doing the one-on-ones, but I guarantee though the trust within his team is tighter than anybody else's because they have that,
Oh,
right?
I'm certain of it.
Because they have that loop going. So
Yeah, I can almost guarantee it. I mean, I haven't seen Jarrett's workplace, and I haven't been part of his team, unfortunately for me. But yeah, I can imagine that they're probably pretty tight over there. They're probably all going to lunch together every now and again. They probably talk about a lot of different things openly. They
mhm.
probably have pretty good communication across different team lines, like dev to PM. They probably have pretty solid communication. These are just kind of guesses, but when you do these things, when you have retros, when you talk to people like they're people, when you give good feedback, when you give constructive feedback, it opens up all these other channels for you that you may not know how to access and you may not even know are there, right? And Mark says, do you think partner programming or pair programming, collaborative work, things like that, usually or actually helps with good feedback, or could it hinder if you're too close familiar with the other people? What do you think about that, Ryan?
I don't think, with the exception of being an extreme edge case, I don't think being too close there's such a thing, right? I I I don't think it would hinder me at all. But there may be situations where I think as I'm starting to talk about it out in my head, where like if you're really close friends, you might avoid the negative. Some people would be like, I don't want to tick my friend off, right? And so they'll only give the sunshine positive stuff. I actually find that more of my friends would be like, dude, just put your ego away for a second. Here's what's going on, right? And I would totally appreciate that. So I think that might just depend um, on who it is you're working with. But I personally, like, if I think about my team right now, I don't think anybody there would be hindered if we were close friends talking about it, or would take it any differently if it was a complete stranger or
Yeah,
new person.
that's
Um,
fair.
that's a good question though. I personally don't see it as being a hindrance, but I could see where some people might.
Yeah, I think that it could be. So in some experience that I've seen, right? And just recently too, I've become very chummy with some of the people at Slalom. And we also have our own internal feedback system. And I've seen how some people kind of, work that to their advantage. Oh, we're friends, let's give each other feedback. But if you've worked with somebody enough, there's probably a good chance that they know who you are and they know how you'll react to different things. And if you're not somebody who blows things out of proportion, they'll probably get on that normal, like, let's be honest with each other sort of kick with you, kind of like you were saying, Ryan. But
Mhm.
if there's any doubt in your mind, that they understand how you'll react to this sort of thing, and that they if there's any doubt in your mind that that you are presenting your best self to them, maybe just go to them and say, "Look, I would really love some feedback from you." And you can just say something along the lines of like, "Hey, no harm, no foul. Just give. I want honest. I want the raw truth. I want everything that you think in a nutshell. Give me some feedback. Give me something that I can work off of because I really, really, really want to improve."
Yeah.
If you approach it from that angle, I don't think you're going to have a lot of issues there, and I think they will try to come as honestly as they can in that scenario.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
I always tell people, be blunt and be brutally honest with me.
Yeah.
Not with everybody, but with me. So, like, I've told my managers that I'm like, "Look, e even if it's uncomfortable or whatever, just know that I'm not gonna come after you for it or anything. I know you're telling me because we wanna improve. So just, hey,
Yep.
man, if it's hard to say, just throw it out there and say it. There's no use just kind of beating around the bush. I like to know right away where I stand and, just be blunt. Don't have to sugarcoat it for me. But there are some people that they may need that long introduction, like, well, I don't want you to take any of this the wrong way, or, that's a really bad example because that just makes it that
That
just
makes it
brings it
worse.
all down right away, right? I mean, that's not what I mean, but yeah, if you think you're gonna maybe have trouble, delivering some kind of news like that, talk to some folks that you may have received feedback from that are good at really delivering that heavier stuff, and ask for tips on how to deliver that. So
Also fair. You have a lot of people if you're in a situation where people are constantly giving each other feedback, you have a lot of people to kind of leverage to your benefit to help give other people feedback. So if you've
yes,
gotten good feedback from someone, if you've gotten feedback that you can use, you're going to find that asking that person how to give feedback is only going to benefit you because they're going to give you the full 101 course on how to give feedback, and now you're going to start giving feedback the same way that they give feedback, and people are going to go, wow, man, Ryan gives great feedback. It's very usable. There's a lot of value in there. I love it. I love Ryan's feedback, even when he's kind of giving me the negatives and I'm not feeling the greatest about myself. He still knows how to add that value, and I come out on top every single time. So that's good. One thing I want to touch before we kind of wrap up here because we're a little bit over already. Feedback loops, just stay out of them. If somebody gives you negative feedback, don't feel compelled to give them negative feedback because it'll spiral out of control. It's not good. Please don't do
mhm,
it. It's only going to hurt your career in the end. It's only going to hurt you in the short, and then it's going to hurt you in the long game as well because you're just going to keep doing it until you learn not to.
yeah. An eye for an eye only makes the world go blind, right?
Yeah,
So
and it's just not helpful to anyone, especially if it's spiteful type stuff. Again, in the same way, positive feedback, don't just go dishing it out because somebody gave you positive feedback. Give them truthful feedback. So it works both ways, right? If somebody gives you negative feedback, you don't want to just throw negative feedback at them, and if they give you positive, you don't just want to shower them with positive feedback either. So just get always, always, always try to be as truthful as you can and give them truthful feedback. Take what you know about them. And also, just because someone gives you feedback or just because you give someone else feedback doesn't mean that it has to go the other way too. It's
right,
not quid pro quo here.
quid pro
This is
quo.
I am giving you feedback because I want to give you feedback. I think you deserve this feedback. I think it could help you in the long run. And then that's it. That's where the whole thing ends. It's not I give you a gift, you give me a gift. That's not how this works.
Mm-mm.
Um, but yeah, I just want to touch on that before we kind of wrap up. Do you have anything else you wanted to add? I don't know if we have any more. Got a lot of snow talk in here.
Yeah.
I'm
If I
super salty about the snow that we were supposed to have here in Atlanta. They're like, oh, it's the 5-year anniversary of snowpocalypse, and it's coming back. And then we got not a single flake, not even one
Yeah.
little tiny flake here.
We got a bunch of it, and then we got the polar vortex, and now today it was like 40 degrees and rainy, so a lot of that crap's melting anyway. So
Oh, that's the
it's so
grossest
messed
part.
up here. It's so messed up here. I would have more. I actually do have more, but that would take us way over.
Yeah, which
But
is fair. We got a
yeah,
lot on soft skills, dude. We have
yeah, we totally
there's
did.
There's a
Or two.
lot of meat here. We can do more of this. If you guys are liking this, let's kind of wrap up on that note, right? If you are all enjoying this, the soft skills, and anything to do with the soft skills, talking about them, chatting about them. I know we got a lot of people in the live chat right now asking questions and stuff, and I love that. I really, really do. I love the interactive type stuff. But if you all want to see more of this, if you want to hear more of this, let us know what you want to hear, what you want to see. You can reach us at on Twitter on @system.debug. So shoot us tweets there. At Life with Ryan, right?
Yep. Yep.
I'm at the infamous RJ on Twitter. We've got at US Brian 28, if I'm not mistaken,
Correct.
and at Megan SF.
Yes.
Correct? Yeah. Oh, oh, got them all. Got them all.
Oh, yeah. So don't be afraid to comment on the video. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid to keep the conversation going on Twitter. If I remember the question that I was going to ask that before I threw it on my brain because it was going to be too slow, I'll promise to tweet it. But yeah.
Yes, please do, because we can continue this conversation in a second episode. We can continue this conversation on Twitter. We can do whatever you all want us to do. But we are going to be out right now. It's 8:10. We went over by 10 minutes. Sorry to everyone who's watching and hating that we're over already. Ryan, you want to play us
the
out?
theme song. There it goes. Yep. We went acoustic tonight.
We did. Bye, everybody.